So I had this idea just at the beginning of this year to start doing portraits of other people on the ferry after I got this tiny sketchbook. I just thought it was so mini and and so adorable that I wanted to fill it with faces of people. And well, my name is Rachelle Meyer. I'm an illustrator, and I moved to Amsterdam North about a year ago. And now that I live on the other side of the water, every day that I come here to my studio, I take the ferry from the NDSM punt to my studio here, which is about 10 minutes cycle from Central Station. And for me as well, I think partially because I'm foreign. I grew up in Texas, and I've never ridden on a ferry when I was a kid. So when I go to different countries and do something like ride on a ferry or take a train, it's always very romantic to me. And I think for a lot of people it's very common day. But for me to be on a ferry, it's very exciting, even though it's something I do every day now. Another thing is, for me as an illustrator, as someone who draws every day, I know that I tend to make things a lot more complicated than they need to be. And I thought one of the great things about this sketchbook would be that it would really keep me simple, because there's a limited amount of space to make a drawing. You can't get too complex. And also that if I started doing a drawing on the ferry every morning, there would be a time limit. So I would be forced to capture a scene within 12 minutes, which is when it says the average time of the ferry ride is 12 minutes. So it kind of served a practical purpose for me as an artist, because I want to continue to get better at what I do, and I have certain goals. But I also really like the idea of connecting to people in my community and really noticing them every day. I really love my neighborhood in Amsterdam North, and I was aware when I started taking the ferry every day, there's an impulse to just kind of scroll through your iPhone or something, and I wanted to do something purposeful, and so I thought it would be a great idea to start sketching on the ferry, and not just sketching, but really looking at the people around me and taking note of them. And I love doing it. I woke up every morning, and I don't know how often you can say this, but when I would wake up, I would be excited about my commute every day. I was like, what will I see today on the ferry? Whose face will I see? And that's a great feeling, and I think it helps fuel the artwork when you're excited about what you do. I live in Amsterdam North in Town-dorp Oost-Zaan, and what I do in the mornings is I get on my bike. Sometimes I drop my son off at school, and from there I cycle down to the NDSM punt, and that's kind of a bit of the far ferry, because from the NDSM punt to Amsterdam Centraal, it's about a 12-minute ferry ride, a 12-minute commute, and it's a funny amount of time, because you can't really read an entire chapter of a book. Maybe I tried that for a bit, but you want to do something. And so I was already very interested in the idea of doing portraits of people, because I had gone to the Frankfurt Book Fair earlier that year, and between appointments that I had, I found that it was really fun to sit at the Wi-Fi points and draw people while they were unaware, scrolling through their phones and stuff. And so I thought, here on the ferry, it's a great opportunity to be enclosed with people for a certain amount of time and observe them and do these quick little portraits. And the way I would do it every morning is I would just sketch things out really quickly in pencil. And then once I got to the train station, I'd get on my bike again and come to my studio and make a cup of coffee and bring my cup of coffee upstairs and sit down here at my desk and finish off the drawings in pen and sometimes in a little marker, whatever kind of I would be inspired to do that day. And it was a great way to kind of warm up in the mornings because I started doing this book in January and on and off most days, and I ended up finishing it in May. I work in a shared studio with two other illustrators, and it's an old warehouse from the 17th century. I think it's a beautiful old building, and we are here in the attic with lots of beautiful sunlight. It's situated between Waterlooplein and Newmarkt, so it's right in the center of town, but it's also very quiet and still, and you have these beautiful French windows where you can look outside and watch geese and swans float by in the water, and that's a nice additional perk. And one of the reasons I was inspired to make a film of it is after I finished it, I was kind of thumbing through it. I really wanted to show it as a whole because I feel like it is more than the sum of its parts, because when you leaf through it, you can really see the changing of the weather, the changing of the seasons over time, and you really have a feeling for the diverse group of people who use the ferry every day. It was fun for me to look through, and I thought other people might enjoy that too. So I'll probably continue to do this in some way, but in a slightly different way so that it's still interesting to me. Again, one of the reasons I really liked how tiny this sketchbook was that I don't like feeling horribly conspicuous standing around drawing people. I liked how small and personal and private it was, and I thought, well, I can just kind of stand here and kind of intimately doodle on the ferry, and it doesn't seem like outlandish. And so at first I was really, I'd say, because I was approaching people a little hesitantly, I tended to draw people a little bit from behind and from the back at first. And then I started enjoying it so much and feeling bolder and bolder that I was just looking at them straight on, and they would look at me, and then there would be a lot of inquiries as to, what are you doing? Who are you doing that for? What's going on? And I also enjoyed that, but then depending on my mood that day, sometimes I just enjoyed observing people and would find a different way to position myself to be able to take them in. And of course, whenever people are when they're absorbed in their mobile phones, in their smartphones, it's a lot easier to capture them without being noticed. One of my favorite things about doing the faces on the ferry was I really would wake up every morning and have no idea what I would see or who I would see, and so just going down to the boat on my bike and getting on the boat was already a little bit of an adventure because it's unknown, it's unexpected, and a lot of times I would just first of all, you have to kind of position yourself in the ferry where you're allowed to go, because during rush hour it can be pretty crowded, and then I would just look around as the ferry's taking off and think, who's available to me? Who can I draw today? And I think my favorite unexpected mini series in the sketchbook series is something I started to call the dedicated reader, because I saw a lot of people on the ferry who would be reading books. And as an illustrator, and an illustrator who works often with books and in storytelling, I just loved seeing people with books in their hands reading on the boat. So I had a few people that I saw over time reading, and that's definitely one of my favorite sub-series. At the end of the film, it says Therewise Enterprises, and Therewise is a creative collaborative with me and at this point just a few other people, and we come from different creative disciplines, and for the most part they're just kind of friends of mine. But we just work together on various projects, self-initiated projects. And for me, and also my husband, starting Therewise Enterprises was really, it was a way of encouraging us to make personal projects important again. And as a freelance illustrator, I feel very lucky that I get to work creatively, professionally, and that's what I do. But sometimes it can be hard to kind of fit those extra things in that are passion projects. And the reason we called our creative collaborative Therewise is because we have a son. He was born here in Amsterdam, and he's grown up bilingually, so he speaks Dutch and English, lullaby, fairly well. And when he speaks English, I think he's always tried to find a way in English to express the word daarom, which means because, or that's why. And because he couldn't find quite the right word to do that, he made up a word, and it was therewise. And the way he would use it in a sentence was always, we just really enjoyed it, because it can be a conjunction, but it could also be just like an affirmation. You say like, that's exactly what I want to do, therewise. And I thought that's just a great word to use if you need a reason to do the stuff you love. And so that's the point of Therewise. And we want to also encourage other people to just follow their heart and create things that they're inspired to do. And the Faces on the Ferry was very much a Therewise project, because it was just something I made time for. I did it on my commute, and I would spend about 20 minutes in the morning at work finishing it off. But it was something that was very rewarding for me. And Therewise, I think it really paid off.